Representative Moran, you are on time, so you get to go first.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we'll, let's see here. Do you have a member of the committee to move your bill?
I will so move.
Representative Metza moves that House File 3444 be considered for possible inclusion in a later bill. Representative Moran, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. So today, before you have House File 3444. So as we know, we're working around this premise around looking at getting people back to work. And that's exactly what House File 3444 does. People who want to work need adequate resources that would enable them to function beyond their immediate needs by having careers in high growth and high demand employment sectors. The YWCA St. Paul has developed partnerships and has successfully implemented a CDL training program. Career Pathways is not only about getting people jobs, it is about preparing them to complete and thrive in the workforce. As a result, this will help increase economic development in Minnesota. Invested in human capital, resources, and employers' needs, Minnesota will have a viable, diverse workforce in a growing economy. So the YWCA St. Paul serves as a catalyst for residents who want jobs to access and utilize the necessary resources to help them improve self-sufficiency and the quality of life for them and their families. The YWCA St. Paul is committed to a shared vision and strategy for industry sector-based career pathways for not only adults but also youth, for building, scaling, and dynamically sustaining career pathway systems. And so I will stop there, and I would like to present my testifier.
Hi, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Gay Adams Massey, and I'm the CEO of the YWCA St. Paul. It's really an honor to appear before you today, and I appreciate your hearing testimony regarding House File 3444, also known as the YWCA St. Paul Career Pathways Initiative. I'm honored to come before you today representing a community-driven service organization with a mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. The YWCA of St. Paul has a century-long history of providing life-changing services to people committed to building a better future for themselves and for their families. Today, we deliver services in 4 core areas: employment and economic development, housing and supportive services, youth development, and health and wellness. Last year, the YWCA St. Paul served more than 85,800 individuals. Our employment programs alone served 960 people. 98% of them were low income, 71% female, and 95% people of color. Our employment programs create career pathways for hard-to-employ adults and young adults by equipping and empowering them to overcome their barriers to employment and self-sufficiency. The programs were established to serve people with multiple barriers to successful employment. Our comprehensive workforce development services include basic skills remediation, work readiness, soft skills coaching, job search and placement services, and extended post-placement coaching and support. Our commercial driver's license, or CDL, training program is just one way we help the hard-to-employ successfully move into the workforce and provide Minnesota's employers with a pool of qualified, diverse, and motivated workers. In this way, we are helping to address the income and employment disparities currently that are a real issue here in Minnesota. Through the CDL program, participants build the skills and confidence they need to become and stay employed, including earning a Class B or a Class A commercial driver's license. When we set up these programs, we try to set them up in ways so that the people we're training develop the skills to fill jobs that are in demand for our Minnesota employers. According to the American Trucking Association, there are more than 38,000 unfilled truck driver jobs available in the U.S., and the industry isn't attracting drivers at anywhere near the rate needed to keep up with demand and growth. They project that over the next decade, the trucking industry will need to hire a total of 890,000 drivers, or an average of 89,000 per year. They estimate that currently the average driver makes between $50,000 and $70,000 per year, a true living wage. In Minnesota, according to the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, employment projections for heavy and tractor-trailer truck drivers indicate 7,700 new jobs in Minnesota between 2010 and 2020. That's a growth rate of 22.7%. So the program, our CDL program, opens doors to a wide range of jobs. Our Class B certification opens the door to jobs including MTC and school bus drivers, trash and recycling truck operators, delivery van drivers like UPS or Federal Express, and dump truck and snowplow drivers and more. With a Class A CDL, participants are qualified to drive a tractor-trailer or an 18-wheeler. These are jobs that typically include benefits and opportunities for advancement as behind-the-wheel time increases. Really moves our participants into living wage jobs with opportunities for advancement, filling the needs of our Minnesota-based employers. One of our participants, I'm going to call her Linda, is a wonderful example of how this program helps low-income individuals succeed. Linda is a single mother of two. When she came to the YWCA St. Paul, she was living in subsidized housing and was on MFIP. She was looking for a short-term training program, and that short-term piece is important to a lot of our participants because they don't have the resources to be in long-term training programs. She enrolled in our CDL training program in February of 2015, and by May, she had earned a Class A CDL. While Linda was in the program, she also acquired work readiness and life skills critical to job success. She learned how to market herself in today's competitive job market. She received assistance with work-related transportation and clothing, and she benefited from coaching and unwavering emotional support. Linda started working at the Star Tribune in June of 2015, making $15.75 an hour, part-time. Now she's employed at the City of St. Paul, making $22.75 an hour, full-time with benefits. She's no longer on MFIP, she's a contributing taxpayer, and she loves the work she does for the city. The YWCA St. Paul served 69 participants through an appropriation grant for fiscal year 2015 to 2016. The grant is still active, but we have some data to share. 34 of those participants have already received their CDL credential, 7 in Class A, 27 Class B. 35 are still in training and on track to receive their CDL before the grant concludes. 11 participants have been placed in jobs. However, training is still underway for the majority of the participants, and placement activity will be going full force through June. I ask you to support House File 3444, the YWCA St. Paul Career Pathways Initiative, to provide much-needed resources that will fund training, workforce readiness, and education programs to Minnesotans like Linda, who are ready and eager to work. Together, we can improve lives, build a stronger workforce, and strengthen our communities. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Any member questions of the testifier? Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Massey? How many people went through your training program as it relates to, I'm looking on the summary of financial activities, to the 3.7? Certainly, the government portion is less than 50%, which is not a bad deal. But how many people went through, how many people did you train or touch?
Ms. Massey.
Yes. During 2015, we served 126 in the CDL program. Related to the appropriation we received from the state, we served 69. That's what the last part of my testimony was about. 34 of those have already received their credential, and 35 are still in training. But if you're asking for the total number trained from all the funding sources we have, last year we served 126 during the year.
Any other questions? If not, any other testifiers?
I think that's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there any public testimony at this point? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion and open it up for committee questions. Seeing none, the motion to lay it over for possible inclusion is carried and will be laid over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Representative Baker.
Thank
Would
you,
like to
Mr.
move the
Chair.
bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, if I could, I'd like to introduce House File 3633, and I do have an amendment to the bill, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add an oral amendment if I could. It's in your packet, but I think it missed the deadline. I'd like to see if I could add it as an oral amendment.
Representative Baker, is it 3363?
3633. Is that what I have? Yep, 3633.
Okay, we have the wrong number on the agenda. Sorry. Okay. Representative Mahoney?
I guess I'm wondering, is it an oral amendment, or is it an amendment that's in the packet? It's
Mr.
an amendment that's coming around. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative?
Mr. Chair and Representative Mahoney, it's one and the same. So it's what I want to put in as an oral, yes.
Representative Baker moves Amendment A1.
To that amendment, Mr. Chair, I guess all it is it just clarifies the intent of this is to put 50% of the funding out to Greater Minnesota instead of the $500,000 as the bill initially talks about. We're making it 50%. So that's what that intention is, Mr. Chair, and we'll get it in the form I'd like to have it in.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, A1 amendment? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. To your bill, to lay over for possible inclusion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I'm excited to be here today to talk about the CLUES bill, is what I refer to it as. CLUES is a member of the Emerging Workforce Coalition. House File 3633 would direct $1.5 million from the general fund to the CLUES Latino Communities United in Service, which is Minnesota's largest and oldest Latino nonprofit, to expand programs to promote workforce development and educational achievement in Greater Minnesota and the Metro. The bill would expand existing programs and create a pilot project to extend these programs to underserved Greater Minnesota cities. Again, I think this is a great program. As a small employer, I have a number of folks that work for me that are Latino. They're hard-working people. One of the things that I've seen over the years is that they need help to be better educated, to create better job skills so that they aren't working sometimes 2 and 3 jobs to make things work in their families. So with that, I think the best way for individuals to advance beyond working multiple low wages in these areas is to give them the better training that we need. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn this over to Ruby Lee, who is president of CLUES, who can give us a little bit more of an update.
Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Ruby Lee. I'm president of CLUES, Latino Communities United in Service. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to hear us today, and special thanks to Representative Baker for carrying our bill. So thank you so much. Our organization is the largest Latino-led organization in the state of Minnesota. We have been in existence for 35 years. We work in collaboration with many members of diverse communities, and our mission is to help support people who are underserved, who have been working in succeeding in being newcomers of this state. Our services include a continuum of the social determinants of health, everything from the continuum of mental health, behavioral health, all the way to economic vitality, housing, employment, workforce development, education, and early childhood education. We serve over 12,000 people a year in direct services and an additional 18,000 people in indirect services. Our services focus on self-sufficiency and eliminating barriers and providing access for opportunities for our clients. We have services in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. We have offices in both cities and some small services right now in Greater Minnesota. Our services in Greater Minnesota primarily are done through staff that live and work locally, and primarily focus on health education right now. We do get a lot of demand from communities and churches and even educational institutions, MINSCU services in Greater Minnesota and other areas in the metro area where they seek our support in helping them bring community folks and bring culturally relevant services to them. The Aspen Institute recently acknowledged our organization, CLUES, as one of the national organizations who provide a two-generation approach. Our approach ensures that not only the parents and the adults in the family are succeeding, but also the children. So while the parents are in class, the children are also in early childhood education. We have AmeriCorps volunteers and staff who work with the children in their literacy skills and in their STEM classes. Our bill, House File 3633, we are seeking your support for it. The reason why is because a one-time appropriation from this body will help us move and expand services in Greater Minnesota and in other parts of the metro area where we're not able to provide services at this time. Our resources are limited in terms of human resources staff, and our ability to reach out to more people is not able to do so without the services. So our capacity is limited. The purpose of the bill and the purpose of the work would be to service unemployed and underemployed adults and working parents so that they can gain the training for better wage jobs. Our people, our families don't need more jobs. What they need is better training so that they can get higher wages. As Representative Baker said, a lot of Latinos and new Americans really are here with the intention to work, and they work very hard. And sometimes with a little bit of training and the support, the wraparound supports that an agency like ours provides in a bilingual and bicultural way, it's really what they need just to be able to succeed long term. The bill will also provide services to youth, allowing youth to gain new skills, access to new careers, including paid internships while supporting their families, and helping their parents also to support their children in academic success and career pathways. And thirdly, pilot programs in Greater Minnesota by which we will be able to work with local communities, not parachute into communities and tell them what they need to do, but work with them in some pilots so that we can help them with their success in providing culturally appropriate services for underserved communities in particular. We have a good track record working with organizations, educational institutions, as I said. We have the know-how. People seek our assistance, and we would be happy to provide that assistance in a more formalized way. At this time, I'll introduce one of my colleagues, Krista Comer, who works directly with clients, and she will share some of her experiences.
Good afternoon. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Krista Colmer. I'm the Workforce Development Trainer at CLUES. So I just kind of want to explain a little bit about both of the programs. I oversee the Pathways to Prosperity Adult Low-Income Worker Program, which our goal in that program is to provide training and employment opportunities to underemployed or unemployed adults and families as well. So we see a whole variety of clients in that program. We see everywhere from, families to single people to people coming right out of the Department of Corrections, all sorts of ethnicities, all races, all ages as well, everywhere from 22 to 65. So our goal, again, like I said, is to become or to help the community and these adults, to give them the tools to become self-sufficient and to provide them pathways to careers in which they can advance and they can support their families and themselves and their communities. So we teach them how to obtain and maintain employment is something that we say a lot in the classroom. Through this program, they get multiple certifications. So not only do we give them the training, but we give them the credentials to go ahead and get that employment. We give them 2 nationally recognized certifications, as well as computer and financial literacy coaching. The second program that I oversee is the Youth at Work program. And so that program is aimed for high school students. And what we do in that program is 12 weeks of hard skills and soft skills training. And then post the training, we do a 6-week paid internship period. And so we collaborate with schools all over the community and identify which members of that school or which students would be best qualified for a program like this, that are motivated and that understand the importance of employment and supporting your family and your community. And as well, kind of similar to the adult program, they also have financial literacy, goal setting, career setting. And we try to make it as culturally appropriate as possible, making them truly understand their role in society, their role in the family, and their role in the workforce going forward into their adulthood. The 6-week paid internship, we try to have that be a college entry-level internship. We don't try. It is a college entry-level internship. And so we've got students everywhere from Igbanugo Law Firm to the Science Museum to Dress for Success. And so one of the reasons that I started doing this work is because my family, in fact, received services from CLUES when I was younger. My parents didn't quite have all the opportunities that I was afforded, and CLUES was actually the company that provided all those opportunities for me. So I do this work in hopes to provide and expand opportunities for youth in this community, and hopefully we can expand it to other communities as well, just to have those opportunities and to be able to understand their important role in society as self-sufficient workers and members. So with that, I guess I'll close it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just want to add that Krista, in addition to her job, she's also a one-on-one mentor to Latino youth in St. Paul. So we're very appreciative of her time with CLUES. So that concludes our presentation. If there's any questions, Mr. Chair and members of the committee certainly would be happy to answer.
Are there any questions of the committee for the testifiers? Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both the comment and a question, I just want to say I know CLUES is a wonderful organization, and I'm really glad this bill is before us, and I hope that we can put some funding into it. And I have to make sure I get my name on it. I didn't see that I don't have it on here yet. I wanted to just ask a question, though, because this has come up whenever, not just in CLUES, but anytime I've ever talked with a Latino organization around the issues of jobs, and that's the issue of being able to have a driver's license in order to get to work and back. Can you just share with us any sort of experience that you're having with that these days?
Sure, Mr. Chair, Representative
Testifiers.
Clark. Certainly, one of the biggest barriers for people to access services and to access education or to access any trainings that we do are childcare and transportation. Even our ESL students today, they pay $5 to get to class per day. And so it is, when it comes to putting food on the table or getting to class, it is impossible. So we try to eliminate those barriers. For students to get to class, in terms of some of them not having a driver's license, it is a barrier, just like childcare. So that's why we provide that education in-house. And we do face, that statewide and certainly in the metropolitan area. That's our offices are both in the inner cities and in low-income neighborhoods, both in St. Paul and Minneapolis on Lake Street and the East 7th Street, where, we try to have offices where people have easy access through public transportation. But for people who live in the metro area, in the suburbs or in the western suburbs or especially in rural communities, that's a hardship. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I just want to assure you that it is an ongoing challenge.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just know it is an issue, and I just don't want it to be the elephant in the room. I want to make sure that we all acknowledge that that's a concern. Thank you.
Representative Fabian.
I'll pass, thank you.
Other questions? Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to whomever can answer the question, how many do you serve, does CLUES serve people in outside the metropolitan area now? And with this appropriation, how many would, if you don't, how many would you expect to serve in greater Minnesota with $750,000?
To the testifiers.
And maybe where?
Mr. Chair, Representative Mahoney, thank you for the question. Yes, we do provide some services that are limited today around health, and particularly around Mankato and surrounding communities. We have staff that are housed in Mankato through the University of Mankato, and most of the services are done through community health workers who live locally. In Greater Minnesota, based on the funding, and it fluctuates sometimes from one amount to another. So if we get the funding, our initial intent is to do larger partnerships where we can have, for example, with youth, provide larger conferences or venues where parents and youth can be served. Our intent is to serve at least between 400, 600, depending on the level of funding. Youth in particular. I think overall in both Metro and Greater Minnesota, we're looking at having an impact in about 2,000 people.
Thank you.
And some will be, direct services, and others a little bit larger scale.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Lee, can you help me? The 1.5 million in terms of your total budget, what kind of a percentage would that be?
Our current budget for this year is $7 million, and we have been able to sustain that budget through about 40% of our income is government and through contracts and direct services. We work a lot with DEED and other state departments who contract our services to deliver some of the work. And so the 1.5 would be a portion of that, and primarily we're looking for a one-time appropriation. It will not put us off balance in terms of our budget. It will help us develop the capacity to expand services so that hopefully we can then come back to you and prove that, our models work, our curriculum works, and provide those services in the area where we receive a lot of demand from.
Follow-up, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then I made a note when you were talking, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do want clarification. I thought I heard you say with regards to this that in the Latino community, we don't need more jobs, we need better paying jobs. Did I hear you correctly? And then what I'd like to kind of get from that is what is the unemployment rate and all that sort of?
Sure.
To the testifier.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Fabian. Yes, we do. Of course, there are unemployment rates, and we have one of the highest unemployment rates. There are also, in terms of disparities, and in this conversation of disparities, one of my biggest concerns is our youth. As you know, Latino youth and youth across the country, Latino youth across the country have the highest growth demographically in the U.S. In Minnesota, while Latinos are growing, and we have many youth under 18 right now. We also have Minneapolis schools, for example, have the worst graduation high school rate in the country. In the country. And so for me personally, that's a challenge and that's a commitment, because I'm embarrassed to say that I live here and I work for this community and we have the greatest rate of graduation, high school graduation for our youth. So I'm very concerned about the disparities. I'm very concerned about allowing our youth to gain new skills, to not be left behind with technology, for example, or to be left behind with other work pathways that our youth have. So when I did make that comment, the other concern with working parents for me is that parents are working 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, in order to pay their rent. The Institute of Poverty recently posted some language where they say that in Minnesota, people that want to pay a 1-bedroom apartment need to work 90 hours a week in order to be able to pay a 1-bedroom apartment. So for family, and if you want to have a 2-bedroom apartment, you need to work 120 hours a week. So our parents, we see them coming in to learn English, and they have maybe few hours. We have had to mold our classes around evening, weekends, and that's where we are successful, because we tailor the needs of the community within our services. In this challenge to help people with jobs, again, it's not, I don't want them to get one more job, because I don't want them to work 4 jobs. That's having an impact in the family. But we can help people grow from a $7 an hour, $8 an hour job, maybe to a $11 or $12 an hour job. And then hopefully build them into a career ladder where, with new certification and soft skills, they are able to show an employer that they have the skills that they need to succeed and sustain the job.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, and for another conversation at another time, I'd enjoy meeting with you to discuss the graduation rates and so forth in Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. I welcome the opportunity.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Representative, any other testifiers?
I believe there's another one on the list,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Henry Jimenez. I'm the new Executive Director of the Minnesota Council on Latino Affairs. Our mandate is to advise and inform the Governor's Office and the state legislature, so I'm here to advise, or my attempt to advise to you on this bill. The Minnesota Council on Latino Affairs supports HF3633. Minnesota is home to over 277,000 Latino Minnesotans, or about 5.6% of the state's population. 74,818 students, or 8.7% of the Minnesotan student population, identified as Latino. Again, this demographic of students continues to grow. 70% of Latino students speak another language other than English at home. And 91% of the youth under the age of 18 are native born, with about half of them having at least one parent who is an immigrant to Minnesota. 71% of Latino working age population is employed, in comparison to 76% of the white population. However, on average, Latinos fare far worse when they get their paycheck. The median income of a Latino-headed household is $18,000 less than that of the overall state median household income. 1 in 4 Latino residents live in poverty, more than double the poverty rate of Latino Minnesotans. Again, why am I telling you these statistics? We know that much of our constituency is facing many of these barriers, but several Latino serving agencies, such as Comunidades Latinas Unidas and Servicio, CLUS, who you just heard from, have assisted Minnesotans tackle some of these issues. CLUS has shown outstanding measurable outcomes year after year. In 2015, under their workforce development sector, they have counseled or served over 1,100 people in relation to their employment services. Through their work, they have been able to assist hundreds in obtaining and maintaining jobs, which in turn has helped increase their wages. And again, remember that Latinos make $18,000 less per household. So they're helping bridge that divide. They have financially empowered 2,000 families by providing free income tax fund filed, which helped return an estimated $4.5 million to Minnesota families. They provided 667 individuals and 233 families culturally competent mental health services. In their education department, they have had 120 high school and middle school students enroll in their youth action program that also saw a 100% graduation rate and a high level of post-secondary enrollment. MCLA has a long-standing relationship with all Minnesota Latino serving agencies in Minnesota, and CLUS is no exception. CLUS, as one of the largest and community-respected agencies, has supported our efforts and that of other entities in greater Minnesota. We see a need for over 100,000 Latinos who live in greater Minnesota to have access to many services that CLUS provides. We ask that you consider the positive impacts HF 3633 will have on Minnesotans both in the Twin Cities and greater Minnesota as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. Representative Mahoney?
We want Henry back at the table.
Oh, Henry, come on back.
Do I have to go back?
Right here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Henry, you had a number of statistics there which were good to know, but a bit disheartening. And the one that sticks out is the $18,000 less in wages earned. My colleague, Representative Clark, talked about the elephant in the room of the driver's license. I'm wondering if you could make any comments to what piece wage theft might have in the lack of Latino families being able to maintain a living wage, because that's the other elephant in the room.
To the testifier.
Well, we know wage theft is a big issue in our Latino community. In reference to statistics, I will love to bring that up to you and the rest of the committee. I don't have that with me now. But I do want the committee to know that Latinos not only make $18,000 less per household, they are also working 2 to 3 jobs per household. That's slightly more than your average Minnesotan. So obviously, they're working a lot more jobs, making a lot less. I'm interested to present solutions to the committee, and I believe that what came forth to you by Representative Baker today includes is a solution to fixing some of these issues. So.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if the testifier could, if you have access to any of those statistics that talk about wage theft in the Latino community, I would ask that you share it with the staff, committee staff, and have the committee staff share it with the members.
Is there a deadline to that?
Representative Mahoney.
Couple hours?
Sometimes we can.
Can I
To
get
the
it by the end
testifier.
of the week? Is that okay?
Be great.
That way we can hold each other accountable. Is that okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other testifiers? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing. Any questions for Representative Baker? Representative Garofalo.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, he's sitting over there in the corner, and I thought he was just critiquing me, not necessarily.
He just sits in the corner a lot.
Yeah.
His childhood.
With the dunce hat on, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the testifiers, first of all, good bill to have before us, although next time I would just suggest maybe you might want to have a better author than you have right now.
Oh.
Just a thought on that. No, a couple of quick questions. So first of all, I believe the bill is intended to be drafted as one-time money. That's what the literature is, so I see people nodding heads, so that would be a correction that would need to be addressed as the bill goes forward. Second of all, is that 3 of the main policy outcomes from this bill would be to have increased workforce participation, to have higher incomes, and to have reduced usage of social services. And one of the benefits of a one-time grant is that we can put these resources into a program, we can see the results of it, and then we can measure those results. So in the event that we were to fund this program at this amount, what would be the approximate estimate that you would, not for you, the author, but for the testifiers, those three variables, increased workforce participation, higher wages, and reduced usage of social services, those are obviously all, while we see the costs of a $1.5 million appropriation, those would all be things that would actually reduce the net cost of the program. In your best estimate, if we were to fund this and come back and look at it a year or 2 years later, what would you say would be the benefits, those three items I measured? What would be the amount of savings the state would get as a result of those three outcomes?
To the testifier.
Ooh. Mr. Chair, Representative Garofalo. You know, I guess I can't put a number right this second, but I would love to be able to tackle that question and come back to you with an appropriate answer. I haven't really thought about the savings in terms of, you know, what would be. Mostly as in developing this proposal, our focus is on, especially in Greater Minnesota, it's going to be about building those partnerships. One of the outcomes, for example, would be in Greater Minnesota, because we don't do anything in terms of workforce development today, or even education for that matter, more than providing support via telephone to people. But being on the ground, we will be able to develop some partnerships. Part of the partnerships would be with employers, for example. As employers, we would build, as we do in the metro area, we would build advisory committees with employers who tell us, depending on the region, and so if we have one in Wilmer, the employers from that area would be able to tell us, for example, what are their needs. And a lot of the things that we hear today in the metro area from employers is that they want more of our clients because they come well prepared, that they are able to keep them for a longer time. So in terms of the savings, you know, long term, it would be instrumental just because employers also will have that benefit. Not only the training and the education in that continuum, but placing people in a job and then helping them be successful at keeping the job. So I think that would be hard to guess, but maybe we can put some pencil to it.
And
Representative Garofalo.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the testifier. Along those lines, and obviously it would be an educated guess, so I respect the fact that you don't want to get pinned down on a specific number. But again, one of the benefits of a one-time appropriation would be that we could come back in a year or 2 years and say, well, you gave us this money, and certainly we want to respect privacy of individuals. We don't want to use their names or personal data, but you can provide examples of additional, or could you be in a position to provide examples of people you're able to serve, you were able to assist, and say, this is what they were making, this is what they are making, here's social services they were using, now they no longer need those. Here's individuals who are not in the workforce. Is that the sort of data that if we were to put it in this bill in terms of a reporting requirement that would be, we don't want to give you a grant and then have you spend $300,000 on reporting, obviously, but those sort of metrics I identified, would there be any opposition to having that be part of the bill as a return?
Not at all, not at all.
To the
Mr.
testifier.
Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Representative Garofalo, we have been, I don't know if you're familiar with the organization called LISC, it's a national organization. We are a financial opportunity center, have been for the last 5 years. We have already an infrastructure and systems within our organization to deliver specific measurements of success and capture the information that we need to capture regarding employees. So we do have that. We're also a member of, or a grantee of the United Way and other larger institutions. Also receive funding for workforce development from the National Council of La Raza, which is a national, the largest Latino organization at the national level. So we do have, you know, years of experience in providing numbers to our funders, and we have been successful in showing progress. So I would not oppose to that.
Thank you. And then,
Representative Garofalo.
and thank you, Mr. Chairman and testifier. And you know, I guess what I'm looking for is maybe more than anything is to have something that goes beyond our current uniform reporting requirements that we have for these programs. And I think just some specific examples of this is person A, this is where they were, and this is where they're at. I think that's just, it's sometimes putting those sorts of details on a personal individual's life can really be powerful with members of the committee as opposed to sort of our, again, the universal report card that we have is helpful and it's good, just to provide an example. So thank you very much for your testimony. And I was kidding about the author of the bill. He's actually a pretty good guy. So, thanks.
We like them.
Well, at least someone does.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Garofalo, I really appreciate those questions. I think those are excellent questions. And I wanted to just tell you I know there's one program that has done cost-benefit analysis just along that line that might be helpful to look at. It's a small program. It's called Youth Build, and they have figured out what the investment in the youth, up front, as these are high school kids who've been in trouble and they're not in school and they're getting construction training, and they've actually figured out what the cost is and what the benefit is compared to the savings for all those community services and so on. So you might want to check with them. You can probably get it through deed.
Any final comments?
Mr. Chair, no, thank you. I guess I'm sort of speechless because I haven't heard such good questions out of Representative Garofalo in a long time. So I think really wrapping it up, one of the things we had talked about too is, again, kind of getting back to the feedback with results driven, is working through the college levels in some of these areas. The MnSCU schools have some programs we might be able to tap into as well. But again, I think it's a great bill. It's a good bipartisan support, and again, I really appreciate the great questions by the members.
Thank you. HF 3633.
I know it.
HF 3633 is laid over for possible inclusion in a later bill.